Did you know that colour can be the doorway to understanding the soul's unfinished business? Welcome to the Possibility Hub video series. I'm Carol Talbot, the creator and founder of the Possibility Hub. In this episode, I'm in conversation with Mark Wentworth, a colour specialist and global colour ambassador who's been studying and working with the transformational power of colour for over 30 years. He's the creator and developer of Colour PsychoDynamics, a methodology integrating colour psychology with the collective and visionary worlds of depth psychology and expressive arts. So let's discover what's your colour story. Hello, Mark. Long time no see.
I know.
We're talking about colour, and when we talk about colour, most people think it's to do with, whether you're an autumn, spring, summer, or winter. And what you've created is something different. You've created Colour PsychoDynamics, and I wanted to really start there because as the developer of this wonderful tool and technique, there's different aspects. There's the colour aspect, and then there's the psychodynamics. So let's start with the colour aspect of that.
So it's interesting you mentioned about the, are you spring, summer, autumn, or winter? Because when I was initially doing my training and people said, oh, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm doing colour therapy. They were saying, oh, do you tell me what colour clothes to wear? And, it's I'm sure you agree that life just has this amazing synchronicity. So my local college started offering a colour analysis course, which is the Are you spring, summer, autumn, or winter? And it was the first and only time they offered that course. So I did the course. So when people said that, I said, yes, I can tell you what colour you should be wearing based on your season. But let me tell you what else colour can do. So it was my way of getting people interested in colour and the psychology of colour.
So what else does colour actually do?
Well, I kind of think I describe it as a sign language of the soul. What we can't say consciously or verbally, we say through our likes and dislikes of colour.
And having just shared my the dislike of it.
Yep. And it's a sense of it's beyond what colors we wear. There will be certain colors that people say, I will never wear that color, or beyond, not just wear the color, because obviously it's about does it suit us or not, but also the colors we have in our environment. If we, for example, if you look around and did a sort of a bar chart around your house, which includes your wardrobe as well, you will probably find that there's a lot of one or two colors in varying different shades and tones. And then there's certain ones which are completely missing or very low. And then the question is, how would you feel if it was then reversed? One which is least became the most, and the one which is the most became the least.
Okay, and I'd shared with you that because you ascertain people's color, or what's needed, or things they like or dislike through their date of birth. And so I know that for me it's yellow, and it's no secret, everybody knows that I love purple, burgundies, deep colors, and that yellow would never be a color that would be in my wardrobe. It's not even very much in my house. I mean, I'm looking at a rug which is multicolored, and thank goodness there is a little bit of yellow there. But when you said, how would you feel if your wardrobe was filled with the colors that you do not resonate with? It really brought up some things for me just then, because it's like, well, what would I wear? I just don't feel, I deleted black from my wardrobe and white from my wardrobe a long, long time
Mhm.
ago. In fact, it always makes it easy going shopping, liking certain colors, because, you know, you delete certain things. And that's not just for your wardrobe, that's also in your home and house, things that you would never consider. So how
Yes.
did you come across this kind of like disconnect? How were you first introduced to sort of colors?
So, well, the very, very first time was probably when I was about 5 or 6, and I remember very clearly it was a Sunday morning going to my grandparents, and on the windowsill was some glass beads, which were creating amazing rainbows on the ceiling. And I remember, and I mean, I'm sure I've seen rainbows before then, but it was so distinct. It was like the colors were alive. I could see so much potential, and there was magic in them. There were stories, and that was the beginning. Um, and then some years later, I trained as briefly as a makeup artist, but in TV and film. And so it's there, but then I met my teacher, who started talking to me about the therapeutic use of color. And it was one of those things that as soon as she started talking to me, it was like she spoke this language that my soul understood. And in that moment, it was like, this is what I want to do. This is it. And I've literally 36 years, never looked back.
And so does that also bring in color therapy? You know, when you have you experimented, or I'm sure you've experienced that, where you're, I remember a wonderful experience lying on a sort of table with this long lamp over me with different colors pointed in different areas of my body, and it was an extraordinary experience, actually. It was like being bathed in a rainbow.
Mhm. Yes, I mean, absolutely. That was part of my training, but I remember, I mean, it was much more basic than what the technology that we have now. But I remember sitting there looking and thinking, if this is it, if this is what my working with color is going to be, I'm going to be so bored. I'm probably going to electrocute someone just to make it interesting because I knew somehow, I didn't know how, that me and color had a very different journey ahead of us.
Okay, which brings us round to linking color with psychodynamics. And then, as you said, for a time you were a makeup artist, but you also worked in theatre. So, is this where this starts to all come together into your own unique pathway with color and psychodynamics?
Yes, so the training in makeup, especially when people hear of the makeup, they always think about the beauty aspect. But my training was in special effects, so I always say I can tell you how to look worse. I can't tell you how to look better, but I can sure tell you. And horror films just didn't do it because it was like I know what was going on behind the scenes, but it was I didn't really follow that, but it's literally like the color therapy became much more to the fore. And it was like I said, it's like I just knew that what I wanted to do was help people become more color conscious, because I tend to believe that most people are colorblind, as in psychologically, is they only pay attention to color when they think about what am I going to wear, what am I going to decorate with, color of a car, if I have that choice. The rest of it, completely blind to this amazing thing that we're constantly surrounded with.
And as you said, the doorway to understanding the soul's unfinished business. And we know that, you know, through our eyes, we only see a very narrow bandwidth of information and a very narrow bandwidth of color. I've actually got some beautiful aura glasses. And when I go hiking, I put them on because the whole, you know, wherever we are becomes totally transformed. And the longer you wear them, the deeper, the richer the experience of wearing these. So I can imagine with Colour PsychoDynamics, understanding the soul's unfinished business through colour enriches your life in a way that you'd never imagined. So take us through how a Colour psychodynamic session would work with either a group or with a private client, because I know you work with both and you travel extensively. I know you've been here in the Middle East many, many times, but I know you travel all over the world running these workshops and helping people understand the power and use of color in the soul's unfinished business.
Yeah. So it's thinking of my way of, so sometimes I turn up for workshops and people are looking and they're saying, where's the color? They're expecting, almost like me to pull out all these different colored cloths. I know I do use some, but people are looking for the color. And they say,
I
but
know
where
I
is it?
expected you to be wearing sort of one of those amazing Joseph and the Amazing Color dream coat kind of things with multicolors and
Exactly. But the color and the color psychodynamic, the color psychodynamics aspect is for me, it's about bringing and working with the colors from the inside out. So the color that you don't see, almost like what I call, in a way, like the colors of the soul, the colors of the unconscious. And so it's bringing them out. And how do they live within you? When someone says, oh, I don't like this color, and I was always say, well, have you thought about it the other way around? Maybe that color has the same feeling about you as you have about it. So it's about developing a language, because as you know, to me, everything has a living, communicable energy,
yes.
frequency and vibration. And so my work with color is about giving it a voice, a shape, and an action. So it is the sense of, we were talking about the various colors beforehand, before we came now. So it was like, well, I wonder what yellow would have if you were speaking as yellow and you were to become yellow. I wonder what yellow would have to say to you.
That's an and as you were saying that, the first thing that came to my mind obviously is a sphere, the sun, and its potential for life and everything. But even a sphere to me represents 360 degrees of possibility. The other thing that came to mind in terms of yellow being in my house is many, many years ago, I did an energy exchange with a client, and she created a soul painting for me. It's huge. It's in my lounge. It's huge. And I never shared with her. And, there's swirls and things like that. But the predominant background color is yellow. And when I saw it, there was a little bit of like, and it is in my lounge. I've always kept it there. But isn't that funny that she also saw that soul color, and she saw it as yellow? And as you're talking and saying yellow, what shape, what voice does that have? And it has, a sphere shape of 360 degrees of possibility.
Yes. And so that's the thing in the groups and in the like one-to-one session. This is the color psychodynamics. It's about bringing color to life, making it visible, because normally when we look at a color, it's outside of ourselves. We're looking at as an item of clothing on the wall, maybe on the screen. But this is about, actually, if we talk about masculine and feminine principles, I tend to talk about color psychodynamics as working with the feminine principle of letting it come through you. And so it is like in a group or in an individual, it's about, what are your colors? So as you know, your color is yellow. And that is in essence this, okay, this is part of who you were born to be. So when someone says, I don't like that color, I would never wear the color or have it But as we're discovering, like it started, well, I've got a little bit on the rug. Oh, actually, maybe I've got a soul painting which has got a
Yes,
lot of yellow in
exactly.
it. So there is a little bit more yellow. But even let's say if someone said, nope, I really don't want to have any of that, it's not about actually wearing the color or having it around you. Sometimes it's about being the color. So I would say to you, in the relation to yellow, how can you be yellow? And as you said, one of the strongest symbols of color of yellow is the sun. So it's the sense of how do you might ask the question, how do I bring more light to the world? That's part of, let's say, a yellow's purpose, a reason to be. How do I bring more light to the world? How do I, what is it I want to bring awareness to? What is it I want to shine a light on? Use all these different metaphors, and
Yes,
that's being your color.
yes. So like you said, bringing the voice, bringing the shape, and also bringing the action. And as I shared with you, if I think of a sphere, I think of 360 degrees of possibility. And what's this called? The possibility hub. So
Mm-hmm.
to me, it is all. So I am taking action on my color and giving it voice. So
Yes.
that's a really nice metaphor. Now, give us some other examples of, I'm thinking because people have this slant towards, oh, color, how do I decorate my home? What do I wear? What sort of people come to you? What sort of people find color psychodynamics? What would they come to you for? Is it specific problems, or is it that they've tried everything else and then they've heard of color psychodynamics and what's that? No, I know you have a
Yeah,
steady stream of clients and
yeah.
have always booked for workshops all over the globe. So it's really gained momentum and traction. And I'm curious to what sort of issues people come to the table with.
So it's really, I would say it's all of the above. It starts with, oh, can you help me consider the like colors in my environment, which is sometimes in business as well, because it's a bit like saying we're all telling a color story. We all have a story to tell. Beyond that, if we start with, we all have a story to tell. We always have an idea of where we're hoping to go or who we're hoping to become in life. And the colors we choose to have around us tell part of that story. So sometimes people will come in and say, how can I use color in my environment for well-being? That's one level. But primarily it's at the point where, what am I supposed to be doing with my life?
Yes, isn't
Let's
that a big
say,
question?
yeah. And usually it's the sense of, well, I've ticked all the boxes. I've got all the things I think I should have, which supposedly make a successful life. And yet there still feels there's something missing. And that's when we start working. It's literally the question is, my question is, who were you born to be rather than necessarily what was I born to do?
Hmm.
Because who was I born to be is much more organic and natural. Let's say a rose is being a rose, it doesn't do a rose.
Exactly. It has to be in that order of be, do, have, not,
Yes.
we usually have the do at the top and it becomes the do, so
Yes.
to speak.
Yeah. So it is literally working with people from all walks of life. I really believe that color psychodynamics should be in schools, education. I sometimes work with parents, helping parents understand their children and children understand their parents, because it's a color is a language. If I know, let's say, if I know that you are yellow, And I can say, okay, and if your parents came and said, okay, here is my daughter who's yellow. It's like, okay, let me help you understand who she is at a basic core level. Because maybe they're a different color, so they will see the world and relate to the world differently. And
Yes,
so
the
it's
old metaphor of having rose-tinted glasses, and that
exactly,
that's the way you
yes,
see the world, and that's the way you
yep,
see everyone. So is this also how you work with, businesses? Instead of just working with, the CEO, it's looking at the team, the overall team, and how they blend and understand each other, and how that links to, what the business is meant to be.
exactly. So with the team, it's helping understand everyone's color because in the color psychodynamics, there's 9 colors. So it's helping people to say, so I'm orange, for example, and you're red or indigo or violet. So we can all be doing the same thing, but we're just coming at it from a different perspective. So it's helping team dynamics. So it can become quite fun. So maybe someone can say, "Oh, Carol, stop being so yellow," and kind of, or be a little bit more violet or purple. So it's kind of, so it becomes quite fun about it. There's a fun dynamic to it. But equally, it's helping everyone relate. That's in a team. And then from a business, it's what kind of color story are you telling? And does the color story match the vision you have for your business? So it's there is a specific way of looking at when you start a business, is this the right day? Because every day has a specific color, and every
Okay.
color relates to an archetype. So do you want to be a pioneering business, or are you a magical business?
Interesting.
Which then helps you if you're doing copy and let's say the colors in branding, it helps you to create the shape, the form, and the action. It's the way it's kind of so in the way, sometimes you can look at something on a website or you can read something, but when you meet the company or you meet them, the two don't match.
Yes.
So it's telling the right color story.
Okay, so it's about looking at also which colors, dynamics blends well together, and also once you understand, who you were born to be, then it's what colors and things you bring in at certain times on certain days and how it all comes together. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So I mentioned about archetypes. So as we know, kind of Jung was very much the bringer of archetypes into modern day. It was Plato who first mentioned archetypes. Um, and so color psychodynamics uses a Jungian kind of formula, and I've characterized the colors into archetypal form, personified them. So coming back to yellow. So I know, Carol, that since 2017, when you did discover you were yellow, so let's say I'm on a mission. I'm almost like on a campaign for yellow.
And I
That
thank you for that.
that the archetype that relates to yellow is the warrior archetype. And so if you think of all the qualities that you may associate with the warrior, then that's part of equally embodying and being yellow. That's part of the becoming and being. So if you think of all the characteristics that you might associate with a warrior, so that strategic kind of planning always needs a goal, always needs to have a sort of a plan, something to aim towards.
Yes.
That's very warrior. That's a yellow warrior.
Okay, so I'm warming to yellow a little bit more, and also, you know, as I said, you also have to look at the colors that you do feel that you resonate
Yes.
with,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
those archetypes are also going to be very active in you. Now,
Yes.
going back to, you know, you said it's, you know, who were you born to be? You use dynamic theatre, and you also use deep memory process in terms of, you know, if the soul does have an unfinished business, then maybe the person is not able to fully embody, you know, who they were born to be. So that's another area, you know, when people feel, oh, what's my purpose? Or particularly at the moment when we've been through so many years of shifts and changes, I see a lot of people who are looking for their next purpose. It's not, you know, this is your purpose for your life. And when
Yep.
it's a B word rather than do, it embraces a much bigger perspective. Yet, you know, life experiences can mean that there is unfinished business. So tell us a little bit more about this deep memory process.
So it started with color when I was working with my clients, and sometimes I would say, okay, if you were to be the color, what would happen? And all these stories start emerging. People would say, well, they would tell stories of different, what turned out to be different lives. And they would say, well, it's me, but it's not me. And deep memory process is a way of understanding the many lives of the soul. And sometimes we can have a dislike of color. And color is this amazing time traveler. It will always take us somewhere.
Hmm.
If we allow it to expand beyond the times of just this life in the here and now, but allow it, it's almost like putting color into a metaphorical search engine and say, go back to the very first time, keyword first time I had this experience, and it will take you into a different story from a different time. I talk about the Jung's collective unconscious as a bit like a big memory cloud.
Yes.
um, and maybe we borrow a story that helps us to understand something that I'm not able to do and doesn't relate to who I am today. So it is deep memory process is exploring the many lives of the soul and allowing us, maybe I don't know, maybe I stood up and maybe spoke out, and for that I was persecuted. And this time around, there's no chance I can have as much, I can go for as many coaching therapy sessions, but there's a part of me that can never break through this invisible glass ceiling. And it's because there's this deep part somewhere in my psyche that says, ha ha ha, remember what happened last time I did this?
So does that bring in the dynamic theatre? And rather than, you know, what's coming to my mind is instead of family constellations, this is like soul constellations.
Yep. So dynamic theatre basically evolved from, because I work with psychodrama. I just won an award, by the way.
Oh, congratulations. What's the award
Yes.
for? Tell us more.
The the award was for it was the Zerka Moreno Award, and it's from the American Society of Group Psychotherapy and Psychodrama. And it was the Zerka Moreno Award, who was was the wife of Jacob Moreno, and it was for the contribution and the raising awareness of psychodrama around the world, specifically outside of the psychodrama. Psychodrama is this, if you've ever done role play, kind of imagine if and sitting in empty chairs,
Yes, yes,
etc.
yes. A
Yep.
little bit like perceptual positions and
Yep.
yes, yes.
Yes. The origins come from Jacob Moreno and psychodrama. So anyway, so I work with psychodrama, and one time I just thought, let's play it a little bit different. What happens if you didn't know the role you were playing, but it was purely spontaneous and intuitive? So if I know, for example, there was, let's say someone said, I really don't like pink, never in a chance, maybe I would say, if you're going to play something, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. And the person sat there and they go, oh, wow, this is amazing. I feel this and I feel this. And then afterwards, I would say, your color was rose, or you were playing pink. And would they say the same thing if they knew who they were playing?
So,
So,
so it's almost a little bit like improv.
yes, absolutely.
Yes,
Yep.
which is so much fun. And, you know, because you have to be really present. And as you said, getting people to be in touch with their intuition rather than play the role that society has taught them, that pink is this, red is that, yellow
Yep.
is that, green is this, blue is that, you know, which is basically, you know, how we've been taught and told. And this is
Yes.
taking away the boundaries of
Yep.
who people believe themselves to be, but also taking away the boundaries of what we've been taught and told.
Yes. I'm talking of that. I would say out of when did I create? I created it in around about 2003. Over that, well, 20 years. In 20 years, I think the most profound experiences in dynamic theatre has always been when people play themselves, but they don't know they're playing themselves. Because it's the things they say. I would say 99.9% is positive, and about their energy levels increase. You know, I'm always asking people to measure their energy levels, so they can have a comparison to how they feel normally. Energy levels, positivity, focus on life is much different. And I think that's the most profound experience when you say, well, you've just been playing yourself.
And again, this is one of the key things I get when I work with people. I always say, you know, our work together is to help you to be more of who you really are and less of who you're
Yes.
not. Because again, this box that we've been placed in by society of how you behave, what you like, what you don't like, what you say, you know, from the perceptions on social media, lead people afraid to be themselves to the point where they lose themselves. So you see this, don't you, in relationships where, you know, the person has lost themselves in the relationship and forgotten to be themselves. And I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day, and she said, you know, her and her partner spend quite a deal of time apart. And yet they've been together a long time and it works. And she said, my mother always said, never lose sight of who you are. Always be, you know, true to yourself and make time for yourself. And yes, I'm sure you've seen many people. It's like, well, if they were asked to play themselves, it would be, well, who do I play?
Yes. Yep. And that, to me, that's the gift of color, because it breaks all these boundaries. You know, I can talk, it's much easier sometimes for people to put things into color than it is to actually put it into words. You've probably experienced this sometimes. You know, people can have very traumatic experiences, which maybe it's so traumatic they can't find the words, but they can always find a color.
Or even a shape.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, and that's exactly what you said, you know, giving shape, a voice, an action to color, and how to use color as the language. So
Yes.
how do people find out the color that they are?
So on my website, which is color, which is the English spelling of color,
Yes.
COLOUR, color, color for life, FOR, life, colorforlife.com. And there you will see what color am I. And there is the formula for how to calculate and which color you are, and a little few keywords about that.
Okay, and you also have a very successful book that's been translated into many languages as well.
Yes, and also on my website, you will find that it's called Add a Little Color to Your Life. You can find that on many different sites. Some of the it's available in Turkish, Greek, but that's more on other sites, but on my website, it will always take you to the right link.
Okay. Now, how do people get to work with you? As I said, you travel extensively, so I'm sure dates and details are on your website of where you're going. And if people aren't, at the moment you're based in the UK, you do travel a lot. And how would they get, if it was a small group or individually, how would they get to work with you? Do you work with people online?
I do. I kind of, it's the current training group I have. We're spread across the world, right from Australia right up to Bexhill-on-Sea in the UK. We're all spread across the world. So yes, absolutely online groups and dynamic theatre, even though we're playing, and I'm sure you found online, it it doesn't seem to matter that we're not in the same physical space. That's been the amazing thing to
Yes.
find that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've seen I, in fact, with a client, I did a little bit of almost family constellations. It's like, what
Yeah.
objects have you got round you? And
Yeah.
it worked. And actually, it was beautiful. So I think we've all found many ways to work with people that gets profound results online.
Yes.
And you also train people in color psychodynamics, I believe.
Yes, I have again a small training cohort of about 9 people because I really want people to get the experience of it. And it's 6 months, over 6 month period, and we meet every other week, and it's 84 hours. But again, information is on my website.
Okay, and now I'm really excited about this interview and conversation for people because, as I said, we are at a time when so many people are feeling lost and what they were doing, a couple of years ago, or they reached a certain age and it's time for a transition. And there's that like, what do I do next? And as we said, it's not about doing, it's finding out who you were born to be, clearing the soul's unfinished business so that you can be comfortable being you and being who you were born to be.
Yes. And this year, more so, I would say the energy and the frequency and vibration is more so for this year because every year has its own color.
Ah,
And
that's an area we haven't touched. Okay,
yes,
let's quickly go into that as
yep,
well. Because we
yep.
said
And
days have color, dates have color, but this year, yes.
yes, so this year, you'll be very pleased to know, is a violet year.
Yes.
And in kind of in color psychodynamics, the archetype of violet is the sovereign. And the sovereign is very much about that is that invitation to take center stage in your own life. So that question of who was I born to be is key more so than ever before. It's like the world needs us to be who were I born to be, not what I was told I should be. Who do I dare to be? And and again, if you or actually you can find there's my webinar on Violet on this Violet year, which is on YouTube under my name, Mark Wentworth. And there is my talk about this year and the influences of the year.
And isn't that the truth that we were talking about finding yourself, being yourself and being comfortable being yourself? And to me, that's important to be sovereign, that you have that intuition, that discernment to know what's right for you, what's not right for you. And also from a sacred oil perspective, violet links to loss and grief.
Mhm.
So that's also letting go of, the past, moving on from, the unfinished business becomes finished so that you can stand in your power and be sovereign. Beautiful.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
so glad you shared that because that's a powerful note to end on and really brings together everything that we've talked about, who you were born to be, the sovereign being that you are, to reign supreme over your own life.
yeah, absolutely, yes, yep.
So thank you
And
so much, Mark, for this enlightening conversation. I'm very sure that people will be rushing to your website to work out their color, their archetype, and purchasing your book or booking a session with you, which, as you mentioned, you can do online. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.